This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Ateli Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. China calls New START's expiry regrettable, urging the US to resume strategic talks with Russia, but says it won't join nuclear negotiations despite pressure from Washington. Now, Taiwan's president says US ties remain solid after Presidents Trump and Xi spoke by phone, a call that touched on Taipei's future, with the Chinese leader urging caution on arms sales to the island. Now, Japan's set to get a boost in the global chip race. Taiwan's TSMC unveils plans to make its most advanced chips in the country. And the race for rare earths is heating up, with South Korea balancing closer ties with China after joining a US-led bloc to counter Beijing's dominance.
Behind me stretches land that not long ago was a desert. For decades, sandstorms here in northern China's Inner Mongolia swallowed grasslands and threatened lives. But today, this place tells a different story. Maosu Desert is on track to be the first desert in the world to disappear.
Growing concern over a possible new atomic arms race following the expiry of the last major arms control agreement between Russia and the US. And the lapse of the New START treaty marks the end of half a century of mutual limits on strategic nuclear weapons. But China says the development is, quote, regrettable, urging the US to resume dialogue with Russia on strategic stability. But Beijing reiterates that it would not join nuclear talks at this stage, despite the US urging China to participate. Now, US President Donald Trump said last year that he did not want the treaty to expire. His Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said that the president is expected to comment on the matter later.
Obviously, the president's been clear in the past that in order to have true arms control in the 21st century, it's impossible to do something that doesn't include China because of their vast and rapidly growing stockpile.
Germany has also urged China to join arms control efforts. Its foreign minister says the Chinese have to be included, adding that Beijing's emphasis on multilateralism mean that they should be ready to show restraint. Well, the New START treaty has placed limits on the world's two largest nuclear arsenals for more than a decade. Following its expiry today, the nuclear arms race will have no formal guardrails for the first time since the early 1970s.
To understand what's at stake with the expiry of New START, we need to go back to the late 1960s, the height of the Cold War. It was then that both sides acknowledged that unchecked nuclear competition was dangerous. That led to the first strategic arms limitation talks. Over the years, several treaties followed. Some capped missile numbers, others eliminated entire classes of weapons. After the Cold War, the efforts intensified. In 1991, the first Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, START I, dramatically cut nuclear stockpiles. That treaty expired in 2009. To avoid a vacuum, the US and Russia negotiated a replacement that became New START, signed in 2010 and entering into force the following year. The treaty was designed to last 10 years with the option of a single 5-year extension. That was agreed at the last moment in early 2021. It pushed the deadline to today. So, what exactly does New START do? At its core, it sets hard limits. Both the US and Russia are capped at 1,550 deployed strategic nuclear warheads each. The treaty also limits the number of launchers, missiles, and bombers that can be deployed. But New START is not just about numbers, it's also about transparency. It requires regular data exchanges, it mandates notifications when weapons are moved or modified, and allows short notice on-site inspections as detailed by an official CNA spoke to who worked directly on the treaty.
Management came down to two big things. One was data and one was dialogue. And those were the two main components of management between the US and Russia in terms of strategic arms. So on the one hand, on the data side, it was an accounting exercise. You had data exchanges, you had notifications, you had a lot of data passing back and forth between each side to say, this is what we have, this is how we're under the treaty. On the dialogue side, you had the ability in a structured way to talk to the other side about any problems that arose over the course of
the treaty, however, has already been weakened. In 2023, President Vladimir Putin suspended Russia's participation. He cited U.S. support for Ukraine. Washington responded by halting its own treaty obligations. As a result, inspections and data exchanges stopped. Yet something important remained. Both sides continued to signal they were still sticking to the treaty's core numerical limits. And so far, there has been no evidence of large-scale breaches. That shows New START still mattered in a weakened form, which is why its expiry is so significant.
The day immediately after the treaty's expiration is not going to look dramatically different than the day that the treaty was still in force. But like any other arms control agreement, you think about an erosion over time. You think about, on this day, with the Russians and the United States, each side knows pretty clearly what the other side has in terms of strategic offensive arms, what they have, where they are, what they're doing. Over time, you will lose confidence in this sort of perfect data that each side has in the other side.
Last year, Mr. Putin proposed a one-year informal extension of New START's core limits. Mr. Trump said the idea sounds good, but no formal agreement followed. Last month, the U.S. leader suggested that if New START expires, a better agreement could be negotiated with China's involvement. No further details have been offered. But Beijing has reiterated its refusal to join disarmament talks.
中方在中美俄三方核军控谈判问题上的立场是明确的，中美的核力量完全不在一个量级。现阶段要求中方加入核裁军谈判，既不公平，也不合理。
Today, there are more than 12,000 nuclear warheads worldwide. Nearly 10,000 are in military stockpiles, ready for potential use. The US and Russia together account for 90% of the total. China, meanwhile, is rapidly expanding its arsenal, estimated at around 600 warheads. Other nuclear-armed states, including North Korea, Israel, India, Pakistan, the UK and France, are also modernizing their forces. In this environment, the loss of New START sends a powerful signal. If the biggest nuclear powers no longer accept limits, why should anyone else?
For more, we are joined now by CNA correspondent Deborah Wong in Shenzhen. So, Deborah, China said to have 600 warheads. Tell us more about its rapidly expanding arsenal and Beijing's ambitions in terms of how it's building up its stash of nuclear weapons.
So we caught a rare glimpse of China's arsenal when Beijing launched its massive military parade last year to mark 80 years since the end of World War II. And it showcased its nuclear capabilities. We did see missiles that could be launched from the air, land and sea. In particular, there was one missile that also caught international attention, and that was the Dongfeng 5C intercontinental ballistic missile. And that missile can release multiple warheads on a single target. Now, so that's the latest variant of China's missile program that actually began back in 1970s. And so the message here that we took away from that military parade was that China's military advancement was something to be reckoned with, and it was also a progress report of sorts, because Chinese President Xi Jinping had long urged, the country to build up its defense capabilities, to modernize its forces as well. Now, the Pentagon estimates that China will have more than 1,000 nuclear warheads by 2030, and that figure is something that China has not commented on. But, there is some ambiguity over the exact figure as well as the pace of growth that China is building its arsenal. What we do know is that there are some indicators that researchers are watching to sort of track that progress. They are looking at Chinese production of fissile materials, for instance, as well as studying satellite imagery about nuclear activity at some testing sites. Now, China has so far pushed back against criticism that its growing capabilities make it a security risk. And in a white paper on arms control that it released in November, it says that Beijing is developing its own arsenal for self-defense as well as to deter wars.
Well, Deborah, we know that the U.S. has been asking for it, but why wouldn't China want to be locked into this arms control treaty, at least at this point?
So China has made clear that its nuclear capabilities, its forces are not on the same scale as those of the US as well as Russia. And so it says it's not necessary at this point to participate in an arms control treaty at this stage. Now, the Chinese Foreign Affairs Ministry, in fact, said this afternoon during a press conference that the country has always adopted a cautious and responsible attitude and approach towards nuclear weapons. Have a listen.
中国一直坚持自卫防御的核战略，恪守不首先使用核武器政策，无条件的承诺不对无核武器国家和无核武器区使用或威胁使用核武器。中国始终将核力量维持在国家安全需要的最低水平，无意与任何国家进行军备竞赛。
So in that same answer, the ministry also called the decision to not continue with this cooperation regrettable, and it urged the U.S. to resume dialogue with Russia as soon as possible. And we've seen that same white paper on arms control in November that I raised earlier, that as much as China is calling for restraint, it's also putting forward policies to foster international cooperation, and basically says that it wants to oppose, the politicalization of nuclear powers, of nuclear forces. It says that countries, especially developing countries such as in the global south, could tap on nuclear resources to develop cleaner energy. And it went on again to list a number of sharing sessions as well as resources that it has shared with these kind of developing countries. So perhaps it really is an indication or a projection of soft power on an otherwise hard topic. Ateli.
Hey, thanks for that report. CNN correspondent Deborah Wong speaking to us live from Shenzhen. A time now for a short break, but coming up next on East Asia tonight, stocks slip again following Wall Street lowering as tech shares remain under pressure amid worries over AI spending. Plus, Google parent Alphabet resetting the bar for AI spending with plans to potentially double its capital expenditures this year to around $185 billion.
What do seniors struggle with?
I can go to bed at 11, then I can wake up at 1+. 3:30 I'll get up, 4:30 I'll get up. Practically every night. I can't focus. I'm very tired.
Oh, good morning.
Hello, good morning, Ismail. Nice to meet you.
Mostly family people, meet them. Friends, very rare, meet them. But before, until now, I want to talk to people, a bit shy.
I see friends having dementia. I'm very scared to have this. It's a problem because you can't take care of yourself.
I've been used to stay for 30, 40 years alone my life. Sometimes we are already, nobody will take care of us.
How can we be healthier as we age? The Science of Aging Well. Every Thursday on CNA.
Brought to you by Agency for Integrated Care.
We are in a chaotic moment.
Midnight later tonight here in Thailand, it's too little too late.
And I asked whether there's a political element to it. Nobody can exactly tell you why.
Look, things are never perfect when you're engaged in politics.
Each one doing what each one wants.
So what's the United Nations doing amidst this world of supreme chaos?
Pushing for answers every night on Asia Tonight. Thailand is heading for a snap election. But behind the campaigning, a border dispute with Cambodia remains unresolved. Will the conflict influence who Thais pick as their new leader?
They have to accommodate these nationalist feelings, that is to make Thailand great again.
And will the ceasefire continue to hold? Insight tonight on CNA.
With the uncertainties of the financial world, where does our economy truly stand? Keep up to date with the latest market trends and get the in-depth analysis that you need to understand the forces driving the global economies. Kickstart your day with an informed view of the business world. Asia Business on Asia First, weekdays on CNA. Brought to you by UOB.
Hello again. You're watching East Asia Tonight, and I've got Roland here standing by with the very latest with the business news. So, Roland, let's talk about the world's biggest semiconductor manufacturer. Apparently, they've just announced a major upgrade for its Japan factory. Can you just tell us more about that?
You heard right. Taiwanese-based TSMC says it's to meet exploding demand and insists it's customer-driven, not a hedge against China risks. TSMC announcing plans to produce one of its most advanced AI chips in Japan. The move seen as a major boost to the country's AI push and a win for Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's tech ambitions ahead of a snap election. The world's biggest contract chip maker will be making its 3-nanometer semiconductors at its Kumamoto factory that's undergoing construction. Previous arrangements focus on less advanced technologies. When realized, this would be the first mass production of such chips in Japan. Local media reports TSMC's investment is worth around $17 billion as the firm seeks to meet soaring demand for AI chips. Prime Minister Takaichi said 3-nanometer chips hold great significance for economic security.
これまで台湾に立地が集中していた3ナノレベルの最先端工場が日本に進出することは戦略物資である半導体のグローバルサプライチェーン強靭化や我が国の経済安全保障の観点から大きな意味があり、ぜひご提案の方向で検討を進めていただきたいと思います。
We believe this fair will further contribute to the local economic growth and, most importantly, form a foundation for Japan's AI business.
Chinese chip makers are seeing an opportunity amid a global memory chip supply crunch, with top PC makers reportedly considering using chips from China in their hardware. This comes as leading memory chip makers such as Micron, Samsung, as well as SK Hynix prioritize production for AI giants NVIDIA, Google, and Amazon due to higher profit margins. This has created a shortage of lower-margin memory chips used in consumer electronics, with many producers warning of production delays and even price hikes. Apple also recently said that it can't secure enough chips to meet surging demand for its iPhones. China's memory chip makers currently mainly supply domestic customers but have seen their share of global revenue increase. But analysts warn that their expansion could intensify any downturns in the industry due to their competitiveness in cost efficiency. On to market action, equities in the region tracking losses on Wall Street as concerns lingered about rich valuations and signs that the AI-led rally may be losing momentum. In Tokyo, the Nikkei 225 ending the day 0.9% lower. The Taiwan-weighted index also lower by 1.5%, but the Kospi led the losses in the region. Chip heavyweights Samsung and SK Hynix, the biggest drags on the gauge. Samsung Electronics ending the day 5.8 in the red. SK Hynix worse off by 6.4. And that's as investors continue to assess the potential disruption AI could bring across multiple sectors. Over in Japan, NVIDIA suppliers Advantest and Ibiden shares also lower. Advantest worse off by 4.8%. Australia's cloud-based accounting software maker Xero yesterday sliding more than 16% on those AI concerns. It did perk up 1.3% today. Chinese stocks tumbling amid a global sell-off in precious metals and tech stocks. The Shanghai Composite ending the day 0.6% lower. Shenzhen was off by 1.4%, led by sell-off in tech counters. Hang Seng Index managing to hold on to its lead. It's ending the day 26,885 points. Weakness in chip maker stocks weighing on Wall Street overnight, reflecting investor worries about whether strong AI spending will translate into near-term profits for companies like AMD. Shares sank more than 17%. That's its worst rout since 2018, following a lackluster sales guidance for the current quarter. Google parent Alphabet is brushing aside market concerns over AI spending. It is ramping up capital expenditure as much as $185 billion this year. That's more than double last year's level following blockbuster earnings. Now, net income rose 30% year-on-year to $34.5 billion in the fourth quarter, and revenue climbed 18% to about $114 billion. Total annual sales that topped $400 billion for the very first time. The surge in spending comes at a time when investors have increasingly grown wary of payoffs from AI investments. Google, however, has been able to show strong progress, with its stock up 76% since the start of 2025. Alphabet and its big tech peers are expected to spend more than $500 billion in AI this year. Meta last week lifted capital investments by 73%, while Microsoft reported record quarterly capital expenditure. Despite Alphabet relentlessly investing in computer infrastructure for AI, its chief executive flags demand outstripping supply. The world's largest contract electronics manufacturer, Foxconn, reporting a 35.5% jump in revenue last month, a sign that demand for AI servers remains strong. Foxconn, also known as Hon Hai Precision, says it's nabbed some $23 billion in revenue in January and is projected to report a 28% rise in sales for the current quarter ending March. The company makes the servers that house chips used in data centers and is one of the key players in the AI industry. Now, South Korea will deepen cooperation with China to secure supplies of critical minerals. It is part of Seoul's plans to ensure stable supplies of rare earths crucial to its semiconductor industry. Trade Ministry says it is establishing a joint committee and a hotline with Beijing, making it easier for local firms to import Chinese minerals reliably and quickly. Authorities will also designate 17 critical minerals for national security and tighten supply monitoring. Seoul will diversify sourcing by working with partners including the US, Vietnam and Laos, and has set aside some $172 million to support overseas mining efforts. Seoul is widening its approach after warning that China's dominance in rare earths is destabilizing global supply chains. It joined Washington's critical minerals ministerial yesterday, aimed at countering China, that's the world's largest supplier, and plans to take a leading role in the initiative. The US has unveiled plans to form a trade bloc with its allies in a bid to loosen China's grip on critical minerals. The European Union, Japan and Mexico are among countries that have agreed to work on setting up new policies, including price floors to help solve vulnerabilities in the critical mineral supply chain. Tony Waterman reports for CNA.
Critical minerals are crucial to modern-day life and security, found in everything from smartphones to fighter jets. But the critical minerals market is notoriously volatile, vulnerable to geopolitics and massive price swings that can rival cryptocurrencies, making investment difficult. Deeply concentrated supply chains are part of the problem. China cornered the mining and processing market years ago, giving it immense leverage, including over the U.S. To loosen China's grip, the Trump administration is now proposing a preferential trade bloc for critical minerals with enforceable price floors.
We will establish reference prices for critical minerals at each stage of production, pricing that reflects real-world fair market value. And for members of the preferential zone, these reference prices will operate as a floor, maintained through adjustable tariffs to uphold pricing integrity. We want to eliminate that problem of people flooding into our markets with cheap critical minerals to undercut our domestic manufacturers.
Stabilizing erratic pricing would be one way of unlocking new investment, which could eventually offer an alternative to China, which in the last year rattled governments around the world after it imposed export controls on critical minerals, including rare earth elements.
We have 55 partners that we're hoping to enter into collaboration with. Many have already signed on. And the goal here is very simple. We all understand that having a reliable global supply chains and critical minerals and processed and finished materials are critical to everything we do.
Top Trump officials say Japan, South Korea, Thailand, and Australia have already joined the club, and that dozens more have signaled strong interest. One country not invited is China. Ahead of Wednesday's summit, its foreign ministry said all countries have a responsibility to safeguard global supply chains for critical minerals.
我要指出的是，中方一贯认为，各国都应当遵守市场经济原则和国际经贸规则，加强沟通对话，共同维护国际产供链的稳定畅通，推动世界经济稳定发展。
Wednesday's summit is the latest and boldest move yet by the Trump White House to reduce its reliance on China.
In recent months, the Trump administration has forged multi-billion-dollar partnerships to develop mining and processing facilities for critical minerals with nations like Malaysia, Thailand, and Cambodia. And on Wednesday, announced that it's working with Japan, Mexico, and the European Union to develop price floors and stockpiles, as the White House puts critical minerals at the center of its industrial policy. For CNA, I'm Tony Waterman in Washington, D.C.
And before I go, a quick check on the prices of precious metals. Trading has been volatile. Silver tanking as much as 17% during the Asian session, snapping a two-day rebound. It was on a record-breaking spree before the crash, almost wiping out 30% last Friday. Silver currently down by more than 11%, $78.05 per ounce. Gold, too, retreating from a near one-week high reached earlier. It is now currently under that 5,000 level. $4,858.72 per ounce. Analysts say prices are being driven by speculative trading, not physical demand. Markets have been volatile since Donald Trump nominated Kevin Warsh as the Federal Reserve Chair, as investors weigh the outlook for interest rates. Geopolitical tensions involving the US, China, and Iran are adding further pressure. And that'll do it for Business. Otelli.
Thanks for that, Roland. All right, time now for another break, but coming up on East Asia tonight, we'll find out what's behind China's push to transform its deserts into greenery.
The weather brought to you by Nippon Paint.
Washable, anti-mold, durable, strong coverage. Nippon Paint Odorless, Singapore's most popular paint brand.
All new on Singapore Hour. Comfort zones are overrated. Here's a holiday that pushes you further.
If you're here in Singapore, you will definitely try this.
Plus, the Gen Zs who turned their love of food into a runaway hit.
We tried to get hired, but nobody was hiring us.
So we decided to hire ourselves.
Don't miss Singapore Hour, Friday on CNA.
This is East Asia Tonight, and here are the headlines we're following. Taiwan's chip giant at TSMC announces plans to mass produce its most advanced 3-nanometer semiconductors in Japan to meet soaring demand driven by AI. Taiwan's President William Lai lauds Taipei's strong ties with the U.S. after Beijing issued a warning on arms sales to the island during a phone call between leaders Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. And China calls the end of the U.S.-Russia nuclear weapons treaty regrettable. Beijing urging Washington to resume strategic talks with Moscow, while declining to join any nuclear negotiations for now. With the last remaining nuclear arms control treaty having expired, the stakes for global security are rising fast. Kate Fisher files this report for CNA from Washington.
Russia's biggest strategic missile system on its test flight in 2022. It followed a thinly veiled threat from 2018 when the Kremlin released an animation suggesting that the Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile could cross the globe and land in Donald Trump's backyard in Florida. Clear evidence that an arms race was alive and well between the US and Russia, even while the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, known as the New START Treaty, was still in play. But now it looks likely that final guardrail will be no more, and it's rattled security experts.
There is a greater danger, growing danger of nuclear weapons and nuclear weapon use. For the first time now, since, frankly, the mid-70s, so the last 50 years, there would be no bilateral agreement between the two biggest nuclear weapon states in the world.
The New START Treaty capped US and Russian nuclear stockpiles. But security analysts say the value of nuclear treaties goes beyond the setting of numerical limits. They create a transparent framework that prevents arm races from spiraling out of control.
In the absence of the negotiation for some kind of replacement for New START, we continue this loss of communication between the two sides on these critical strategic issues.
That communication was hard sought during the years of the Cold War's nuclear arms race. The New START Treaty is the last in a line of major nuclear arms control treaties between the US and Russia, signed in 2010 by then US President Barack Obama and Russian leader Dmitry Medvedev. Its expiration sets the stage for a new arms race, not just between Moscow and Washington.
If there are no constraints in the two biggest nuclear weapon states now, certainly countries like China are not likely to be wanting to cap their quantitative nuclear arsenals in any way, shape, or form. I think it doesn't really affect the other, secondary countries. And here I would include the United Kingdom and France, because in some ways they really do not have the capacity to build up their nuclear arsenals.
And a nuclear arms race today isn't limited to mere quantity of nuclear weapons.
Опять же, те же самые гиперзвуковые технологии, постоянное совершенствование, развитие высокоточного оружия в неядерном оснащении. То есть в целом, да, технологическая, да и количественная в отдельных секторах гонка вооружений, она идет.
Yet despite the looming potential for a 2- or 3-way arms race, there's been relative silence in the US Capitol on plans for a new treaty. Rather, the Trump administration is expanding its arsenal. Last month, the president signed into law a new more than $20 billion investment in modernizing the US's nuclear capabilities and trying to ensure that it's at the leading edge of tomorrow's nuclear arms race. For CNA, I'm Kate Fisher in Washington.
For more on the expiry of the New START treaty, do check out our website, cna.asia, as well as our mobile app. Taiwanese President William Lai says that the island's relationship with the United States remains intact, hours after President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping spoke on the phone over a whole range of issues that included Taipei's future.
台美关系坚如磐石，各项合作计划持续进行，不会改变。我希望国人同胞都能够支持政府、支持国家，让我们一起携手前进，我们国家一定可以越来越好。
Well, the U.S. president describing the call with Xi Jinping as very positive. Well, he said the two sides spoke about Chinese soybean, oil and gas purchases and about regional conflicts. Mr. Trump said that Beijing is considering buying 20 million tons of American soybeans, up from the current 12 million. Now, he's due to visit China in April. China's foreign ministry says Mr. Xi stressed the importance of ties with the U.S., adding that the Chinese leader hopes both sides will find ways to resolve their differences. But Mr. Xi issued a warning on Taiwan, telling Mr. Trump to be prudent when supplying weapons to the island. While the U.S. does not recognize Taiwan's claim to statehood, it has kept unofficial ties with Taipei. Washington remains the island's most important arms supplier. Beijing announced the U.S. latest $11 billion arms sale to Taipei in December, which included air, navy and missile units. China is stepping up retaliation against Panama after the country voided a port operating contract linked to Hong Kong conglomerate CK Hutchison. Bloomberg reports that Beijing has asked state firms to halt talks on new projects in the Central American country. The move follows Panama's decision to cancel CK Hutchison's contract to operate 2 ports along the Panama Canal. People familiar with the matter say the directive could derail potential investments worth billions of dollars. And China has also urged shipping companies to consider rerouting cargo through alternative ports if costs do not rise significantly. Now, customs authorities are stepping up inspections on Panamanian imports, such as bananas and coffee. Existing Chinese-backed infrastructure projects could also be affected, although no final instructions have been issued. The decision comes after a court ruling welcomed by the U.S. as Washington seeks to curb China's influence in the region. Beijing has warned Panama that it would pay, quote, a heavy price. CK Hutchison is seeking damages through international arbitration. China has been combating desertification for more than 4 decades now. Through projects such as the 3 North Shelter Belt, it has turned shifting sands into forests, farmland and renewable energy hubs. CNA's correspondent Tan Sihui went to Inner Mongolia, where some of China's largest deserts are, to find out more about this ecological miracle, as well as its trade-offs and durability.
Once thought of as mission impossible.
如果沙漠化过分严重的时候，那可能就是说会沙子形成一个高大的沙丘，掩埋我们的村庄，掩埋我们的道路。
Seas of sand now transformed into green forest. A decades-long project to hold back China's growing deserts, now bearing fruit.
Oh, 很甜. It's very sweet, just like what we eat in the tropics.
But how exactly has China's arid north gone from ecological disaster to ecological miracle? And can a new generation keep up the fight amid new challenges?
And we've got Tan Sihui herself joining us live from Beijing. Well, Sihui, glad to see that you enjoyed that banana there. But on a bigger picture, help us understand, what is the mission here on China's part? And all these efforts to curb the desert have been ongoing for years. Why?
Well, I gotta say first that I really enjoyed that banana. But Otelia, when you think about deserts, I can imagine you'll be thinking natural landscapes, beautiful sand dunes with perhaps maybe camels walking on them. But desertification is another thing. It's land degradation that could be caused by drought, climate change, even human activities like overgrazing and herding. This has really led to serious consequences. We have talked about the dust storms and sandstorms that could bury villages, and it could even reach the capital, Beijing. Just recently, 2023, we saw 400 million people in China being affected by these sandstorms. So really, when we look at the goal of this project, this decades-long project that China has embarked since the 70s, it's really to reverse land degradation, or to really slow down land degradation. And this can be done through a series of ways, like tree planting, trying to regulate the land, and trying to ensure that the local livelihoods can be sustained. And so one of the key characters that we spoke with is Zhao Xinian. He is a tree planter, and he has been doing this for many years. And we were very curious as to how these deserts can eventually become trees. And so we got him to demonstrate a bit of it and got to understand just what these tree planters do. So take a listen.
草房割的第一步呢是画线，画完线之后，第二步就开始铺草，把这个草均匀的撒在这个画的线上，然后用这个钝一点的铁锹头把剁进去啊，斜一点。 啊，再进去，先做经线，然后再做纬线，方格就做出来了。
Straw grids are just the beginning. The next step is planting hundreds of shrubs, grass, and vegetation, mostly native species. Some stabilize moving sand dunes, while others slow wind speeds and prevent soil erosion.
就需要这个特别能吃苦的人才能坚持下来。因为春季的话，刮大风。 沙尘暴呀都特别多，还有就是我们有时候不得就是住在沙漠里面，可能没有电也没有水，得发电，然后得拉水去搭帐篷，一住就是1、2个月，跟外界都联系不上的那种。
Oh, so it looks like really epic effort there, you know, back-breaking work to be doing this stuff to reverse land degradation. But it's been, what, like 47 years since? Walk us through what are some of the key achievements so far?
So when we were there, we were very excited to see the results of this project. And I think one of the main things was seeing the forest coverage rate. We saw miles and miles of forest trees, what used to be sand dunes, now really all covered in greenery. So forest coverage rate has increased to 14% today. That was up from 5% in the 70s. And so these trees also act as a form of a belt to ensure that these sands don't encroach into the river, especially the Yellow River in China. And so that's where it got its name, the Great Green Wall. Now, another achievement that we saw as well is called the Solar Green Wall, the Solar Great Wall. And we saw this 400-kilometer stretch of solar panels, and it was very interesting because it not just supplies clean energy or renewable energy, it also serves another purpose whereby when you see the solar panel, what grows beneath it is trees and shrubs. So what they're trying to do is to ensure that
a new form of grassland is growing beneath that solar panel. So that's another interesting thing that we saw. Another miraculous thing we heard when we were there was that they could grow fruits from desert soil and desert sand. It's very interesting. The farmer told me that it was through trial and error, years of trial and error. They had first planted the trees, and the leaves would fall and decompose, and organic matter would grow, and microbes would grow, and eventually this desert sand becomes fertile soil. So we wanted to hear more from that, from this farmer. So take a listen.
Bananas, papayas, and even dragon fruit. A taste of a possible future.
很甜。
首先是检验我们的这个温室能不能够在这个零下30多度的这个西北的这个高寒地区能不能越冬的一个问题。只是通过阳光、塑料布，然后棉被这么一个状态。那后期我们引种过来以后，它的表现是非常好的。当开始的时候是担心温度，再就是我们要担心它在这里能不能长好呀？长好就我们要考虑土壤。到今天为止，我们可以说300多种瓜果蔬菜都能够在这儿健康生长，包括一些亚热带的作物，香蕉、火龙果这些。
Miss Liu moved from eastern China's Shandong province in 2009 to work on the demonstration project. Today, fruits grown on what was once a desert are sold as far south as Shenzhen and Hong Kong.
刚开始当一份工作是一份要生存下来的工作，那后期干着干着和这些植物产生了很深的感情，那就像自己抚育的孩子一样，看着他们在这儿从种子到苗子到生长到开花到结果，而且到这些果实真正拿到消费者口里边，拿到大家面前，他们给出的反馈，哦，这沙漠里面种出来真好吃的时候，那你的这份获得感，成就感非常的价值就体现出来了。
So growing fruits on desert land, that is truly incredible. But like everything else, there is an end date to it. A target, an end date for this program, I believe, is 2050. I mean, are they going to get there? How sustainable is it?
Well, we're all hoping that they would get there. You saw the heartbreak, the backbreaking work of those tree planters. And so what they're doing is ensuring that technology is also helping them to allay that hard work. And so we also featured some high-tech drones. They help with tree planting. So it helps with increasing the speed of tree planting. The one drone could, in fact, replace the work of 15 workers and tree planters. So now they're also trying to improve the technology of these drones, trying to resist the wind better, improve the speeds of these drones. And so one way would be the technology that they're constantly updating. Another thing is that we know that climate change is an ongoing issue, is an ongoing challenge, and anytime dry spells could happen. And so they're also looking into improving the native plant species that they are planting over there. But crucially, it is also the local buy-in. We need to ensure that the locals there continue to have sustainable livelihoods, as we've also heard from reports that some of the locals there, you know, their main income is through herding, and some of that is being curbed when this program had started. And so that is the main thing that they are trying to push for, local livelihoods to be sustainable. But throughout this story, we heard the pride from the locals there, the tree planters, the farmers, and this was the voices that we heard from the story.
这片可就是咱们眼前这片和绿海，就是过去就是从这么大的一直到现在，这是我看着和长大的，正好像和我的一个绿色孩子。
通过这10几年的艰苦努力就是和沙漠也变绿了，收入就是沙漠变绿，沙治住以后，沙漠变绿了，就那以后种起来的沙柳就开始有了收入了。
Josue, that's a great story you covered there. Thanks so very much for that, Tan Zihui, there in Beijing. Well, I'm certainly going to be catching it, and you can as well. You can watch it on CNA Correspondent anytime on CNA.Asia, on YouTube as well, and fresh episodes drop every Wednesday. All right, coming up next on East Asia Tonight, a perfect storm of geopolitics, shifting trade rules and AI adoption is redefining the global order. But how do leaders turn this volatility into smart growth? Well, we'll bring you insights from the region's top leaders at the CNA Summit in Jakarta.
What are some ways to slow down and even reverse aging?
Continue doing your lifestyle modification, and I foresee that the sugar and the cholesterol will definitely improve further.
Treat the brain like a muscle. The more you use it, the better and stronger it becomes.
Okay, 跟着我啊，我去 B.
Counter-Strike can be beneficial because first and foremost, it's a team game.
When you go for a class, there is social connection and purpose.
Doing art activities can promote brain health.
The art is very good. Everybody was so happy.
Now I have the confidence to talk to people.
I learned a lot of things and it made me feel better.
I feel more happy, more confident, more active.
The Science of Aging Well, every Thursday on CNA.
Brought to you by Agency for Integrated Care.
Thailand is heading for a snap election. But behind the campaigning, a border dispute with Cambodia remains unresolved.
โดนคิดว่าประมาณ 70% นะมั้งผมว่า
สินค้าไทยเริ่มโดนแบน
Will the conflict influence who Thais pick as their new leader?
They have to accommodate these nationalist feelings. That is to make Thailand great again.
And will the ceasefire continue to hold? Insight tonight on CNA.
We're in a chaotic moment.
Midnight later tonight here in Thailand, it's too little too late.
And I asked whether there's a political element to it. Nobody can exactly tell you why.
Look, things are never perfect when you're engaged in politics. Each one doing what each one wants.
So what's the United Nations doing amidst this world of supreme chaos?
We're pushing for answers every night on Asia Tonight.
Saturday on Japan Hour. Al-Marie is famed for their sweet and juicy apples.
こんな小さいやつが秋になると大きいリンゴになるんですよ。
But surviving this harsh land requires perseverance.
台風が来てリンゴが落下しちゃうんですよ。どうしてもみんな出稼ぎ出ちゃって。
Japan Hour, Saturday on CNA.
Japan Hour is brought to you by Sumitomo Corporation. MUFG, committed to empowering a brighter future. Zip Air, no fuel surcharge from 216 Singapore dollars. And IHI.
The CNA Summit 2026 was held in Jakarta today. Now, the forum bringing together decision makers from government, businesses and finance to discuss smart growth and how leaders can navigate geopolitics, new tech and changing capital flows. Well, CNA's Olivia Marzuki conducted a panel discussion with 3 industry leaders. The participants talked about how investment and innovation are being applied to tackle fast-evolving threats, such as scams.
On the fence. A lot of governments are working with the local operators to combat the increasingly sophisticated bad actors who have a high degree of sophistication. They use AI tools as well. So with AI tools and machine learning, we're able to do things now really quickly because we're training the model. And at Singtel in Singapore, we're blocking on the average about 10 million scam calls and SMS messages every month. It used to be 30 million, but it's 10 million now because of one, effectiveness, but second, also the bad actors are changing their modus operandi to other ways. But that's one area where we see improvement, and I think without that, it is a tough battle.
GoTo and all its digital innovation, it just keeps growing, and we see that these bad actors, they're also equally fast. sometimes they outpace the industry, they outpace the regulators. How do you tackle that?
So maybe allow me to add a few points, right? So going back to the earlier point about moving fast, right? We have an internal discussion, internal saying in Goto, where we say velocity is life, right? So a point to note here is not speed is not life, right? Velocity is life. What's the difference, right? Velocity is a vector, right? It is speed multiplied by direction. So we just need to make sure that we are moving in the right direction as quickly as possible. An investment that we make is clearly wrong, and we do it quickly, and we realize quickly, very fast, that we're wrong. But because we're clear, we know what adjustments to make. Versus where you may have an investment that pan out, but because we're not really clear, we're not able to replicate it. So coming back, I feel that the main point here is we need to have the right direction and then just move as fast as possible. Velocity is life. While at the same time, in order to make that a reality, we have to be able to deal with some ambiguity. And it's okay not to know the answer as long as we are clear what we are testing. So between those two philosophies, then we try to make sure that we outsmart the scammers. It is a very consistent challenge for us. And I'm happy to say that after 4 or 5 years, we have built up sufficient technological muscle to do that, to combat that. They are getting more and more sophisticated, deep fakes and etc. We have our own models as well. And our models, when we first came out with them a few years ago, were probably 50-60% accurate. But now, after multiple years of investment, have gotten to the point where we feel relatively comfortable.
We see the unassailable momentum around agentic commerce. So one of the things that we do talk about in terms of AI is we're fairly certain, regardless of how AI changes, whether there is a boom or a bust in the capital markets, your ability to buy something through an agent is here to stay. And I used to spend a lot of time in Singtel in a previous lifetime, so I'll use a mobile phone analogy in terms of how we think about technology. If you think about the mobile phone device that's just about released, the new ones, you might find that their features are kind of only incrementally different, not very different from the last version of the handphone. But if you look at the mobile device versus the one that you had 5 years ago, it is completely different because all technology companies will build 5 to 10 years for the future. So one of the things that I think we've done, and this is just in the last 90 days or so, is we've released a set of standards for payments to be made through agents or bots to make them safe in the event that the bot hallucinates or is hijacked, because we believe that 5 to 10 years from now, that's the technology that's required to keep people safe, in addition to the scams that we see in the world today.
I hope you've enjoyed Thursday's edition of East Asia Tonight. Don't forget your headlines anytime at cna.asia and look us up on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for watching.
The weather brought to you by Nippon Paint.